When it comes to eating meat, do we need to worry about saturated fat and cholesterol?
Depending on your genetic makeup, maybe. So the main sources, the main whole food sources of saturated fat and cholesterol in the average person's diet is meat, especially red meat, dairy products, especially higher fat dairy products. And you also, you get some saturated fats from foods like chocolate, for example, and eggs. So eggs also have saturated fat and cholesterol. So depending on your genetics, you may or may not need to worry about it, and depending on the makeup of your entire diet. So if you are an ApoE4 gene carrier, and this is something that a lot of doctors will run as a standalone genetic screen now, but also if you've ever done a 23andMe, I think Ancestry has this one in there, right? Like those types of at-home genetic tests, you will have that information somewhere in your reports. So finding out what your ApoE genotype is, if you've got 1 or 2 copies of 4, then you are a person who definitely has increased risk of health problems, especially cardiovascular disease and Alzheimer's disease, when you're consuming a higher saturated fat diet. So in which case, it's all about how much are you eating? Are you eating red meat at every single meal, through 21 meals a week? That's probably too much, right? So then it's all about, right, the balance. So you might want to put your food choices into a tracking app like Chronometer or MyFitnessPal, right? Some app that gives you your nutrient breakdown, and see what your saturated fat percentage is. And definitely you want to stay below 10% of total calories. If you have familial hypercholesteremia, high cholesterol runs in the family, then you are a person who does need to moderate dietary cholesterol. You're probably the only person who needs to moderate dietary cholesterol, because for most of us, the cholesterol in our foods, right, the cholesterol in eggs doesn't translate to the cholesterol in our blood. But there is a group of people with a genetic predisposition who that is the case, right? The cholesterol in foods does increase cholesterol in your blood. So the answer to this question is really like, does this all run in your family? If the answer is yes, then the answer is yes, right? Making sure that we're moderating our intake of high saturated fat foods. The non-whole food places we're getting saturated fat is added fats, so added animal fats, but also margarine, right? So the hydrogenated fats that are found in a lot of processed and ultra processed foods, they bombard like vegetable oil fats with hydrogen until it becomes a fully saturated fat. So it goes from polyunsaturated to fully saturated. It's not a trans fat; those are not allowed anymore. But it is a saturated fat, and it is there is definitely indication in the scientific literature that that is also a saturated fat that we want to moderate, that we have improved health outcomes when we're not consuming basically solid butter texture things, so butter or margarine. So yeah, it depends on your genetics if it's something to worry about, and depends on what the composition of your whole diet looks like and what your other risk factors are.